At the dinner table, my mother set down the lasagna and said it the way she'd asked someone to pass the salt. "Sweetheart, a funeral that long is just too heavy. We've already paid the deposit on Lauren's trip. You understand." That was what she said to my face 2 weeks before I buried my husband. On the day I stood at that podium reading his eulogy, my phone would not stop vibrating in my pocket. 51 missed calls. One message from my mother in all capitals. "Call me now. Something's gone terribly wrong." They thought that was their worst day. They had no idea I had already been sitting with the audio. They had no idea that before sunset, every word they had thrown at me would become the evidence that undid them. In front of 500 people. "My name is Kate Reeves, 33 years old, senior 911 dispatcher for Collin County Emergency Services. I have answered other people's worst phone calls for 11 years. Collin County 911, what is your emergency?" Close to 400,000 times now, give or take. I have 3 rules and they have never failed me. Keep the voice flat. Use the caller's name. Count their breaths. My voice has been the last calm thing some people ever heard. That has always been the job. The job did not prepare me for the night that voice on the other end of the radio belonged to my husband. "My name is Kate Reeves. My husband was Daniel Reeves, 38 years old, a firefighter and paramedic with Collin County Fire Station 9. He left a glass of water on my side of the bed every single night. He never told me why. He just did it. Every morning before his shift, he took the empty one back to the kitchen. I never asked him to do it. He never stopped. We lost 2 pregnancies between 2021 and 2023. The second one I don't talk about even now. In the spring of 2023, Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table, put his hand over mine and said, "I think we are enough. Let's open a different door." We started the adoption process that June. 2 years of fingerprints, background checks, home study interviews waiting. On February 4th, 2025, our case manager left a voicemail. "Congratulations, Kate, Daniel. Home study approved. Now we wait for the right match." That night, Daniel pulled a plain white mug from the cabinet, one we never used, and wrote on the side in black marker, "For the one who's coming." He put it back on the shelf where I would see it every morning. 3 weeks after that approval, the phone I had answered for 11 years started ringing for me. The roads were bad that Friday. Daniel was on the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift, riding with his partner Marco Silva, 24 years old. 2 years in, a kid Daniel had quietly taken under his wing. The sleet had started around 7 and never stopped. At 8:15, I texted him, "Be safe, roads are icy." He sent back a thumbs up. That was the last thing I ever had from him. I was on my own swing shift, watching the communications board, listening with half an ear to a structure fire warming up across the county. I did not see, because I was watching the wrong screen, that Daniel's personal phone had already started, ringing for the 4th time that shift. I did not see who was calling. I should have. From 7:22 p.m. to 11:08 p.m. that night, my mother called my husband 7 times. He answered the first 2. Each conversation was under 30 seconds. He let the next 5 go to voicemail. He never told me. He never complained. He stayed on shift until the very last minute, and then he stayed past that. At 11:08 p.m., my mother left him a voicemail. He didn't listen to it that night. It sat in his phone for 16 days before I heard it for the first time on a Sunday morning that didn't yet know what it was holding. "Daniel, honey, I know you're working, but I really need you to stop at the wine shop on Greenville Avenue on your way home. Lauren's bachelorette brunch is tomorrow, and I completely forgot the rosé. You'll be going right past it. Don't tell Kate. She'll make a whole thing out of it. Be a sweetheart." 41 seconds long. That voicemail would do more damage to my mother than any lawyer ever could. At 11:47 p.m., dispatch sent Unit 911 one more call. The relief crew was running 45 minutes behind on a transfer across town. Daniel volunteered. Marco signed off. They were going to be home by 1 a.m. They completed the transfer at 12:55 a.m. Patient delivered. Paperwork signed. They got back in the cab. At 1:23 a.m. on State Highway 380 at mile marker 14, a 29-year-old named Curtis Webb Twice the legal limit. No headlights. Lost control of a pickup truck and hit Unit 9-1 on the passenger side. Daniel died at the scene. Marco survived with a shattered collarbone and a concussion. At 1:58 a.m., a Denton County dispatcher named Grace Morales called my kitchen landline. Her voice was professional and very, very soft. "Mrs. Reeves, this is Grace Morales from Denton. And I'm so sorry to be the one calling you." His blue jacket was still on the hook by the door. The glass of water he had set out for me at dinner was on my nightstand, half drunk. The kitchen clock said 1:58. Stay with me, because what I found out 14 days later, and what happened at that memorial ceremony, is the part I need to tell completely. For 2 days I sat in a house that was too quiet. My parents did not come. My father sent one text on Saturday morning. "So sorry, Kate. Praying for you." My sister Lauren sent one message that afternoon. Devastated. "So sorry." She didn't say whether she was coming. She didn't ask what she could do. Barbara Reeves came, Daniel's mother, 61 years old, widowed 5 years before, walked into my kitchen on Saturday afternoon with 2 foil-wrapped casseroles and a bouquet of sunflowers, because Daniel had loved sunflowers. She put everything on the counter, sat down across from me, and didn't say a word for 3 hours. At the end of those 3 hours, she said one thing. "He talked about you on every shift. Every single one." Then she stood up, washed her cup, kissed the top of my head, and drove home. On Tuesday afternoon, a FedEx envelope arrived. Overnight Express. Inside was a Hallmark sympathy card, the kind with a pre-printed verse. Lauren had signed her name at the bottom. Above her name she had written one line. "Thinking of you. Hope you find some peace today." Folded behind the card was a glossy itinerary printed on cardstock. Lauren's bachelorette weekend, April 3rd to 5th, Hill Country Wine Trail. 2 pages, spa appointments, a welcome dinner, a Sunday morning mimosa brunch with a flower arranging class. I learned later she had included it so I would know why the family couldn't make it to the funeral. She thought that was a courtesy. I put the itinerary next to the adoption folder on the kitchen table. Orange, 2 years thick. Reeves, active file 2023-2025. 2 pieces of paper on my kitchen. Table told me exactly where each of us thought my life was supposed to go next. On Thursday morning, I called my mother. I told her the funeral was set for Saturday, March 8th at 11 a.m. at Carrington Funeral, home on Legacy Drive. I told her I needed my family in those pews. I told her I needed to look out and see them when I stood at that podium. She paused. Then her voice went soft and reasonable, the way she explained things to me when I was small. "Honey, Lauren's bachelorette trip is that weekend. We booked everything in January. It's non-refundable. And honestly, sweetheart, a funeral that long is just too heavy. Lauren needs us present right now. You understand?" She said it the way you'd talk about a movie that ran too long. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I said, "Okay." I hung up. I went to work. At 2 p.m., my phone vibrated on the console. The name said Cheryl Dawson. Cheryl had trained me in 2014. 60 months of ride-alongs. 3 months of mock calls. A quiet fierceness I had recognized immediately. She had been widowed in 2019. She was by then the assistant supervisor for quality assurance, which meant she ran every line of duty death review. One had just happened to me. I stepped into the hallway. Cheryl didn't waste time on a greeting. "There's audio you need to hear before the formal review. I'm not playing it for you alone in a conference room. Come sit with me tomorrow." She didn't tell me what was on the audio. I didn't ask. I told her I would be at her office at 8 the next morning. She said, "Bring coffee. I'll bring the rest." She was waiting at 8 with the door already closed and the blinds pulled. 3 folders on her desk. The top one labeled in square handwriting. Verizon CDR, Reeves D. March 7, 2025. The second, Caddy Incident Review, 9-1-047. The third said simply, voicemail transcript. She opened the first folder. Verizon had delivered the call detail records 2 days earlier, expedited because I was the surviving spouse and a county employee, and because Daniel's death had been classified as a line-of-duty fatality. 4 pages of timestamps. 7 rows highlighted in yellow. 7 incoming calls from one number, my mother's, between 7:22 p.m. and 11:08 p.m. on the night Daniel died. Cheryl read it flat and exact. 7 incoming, 2 outgoing. Each return call under 30 seconds. Total communication time during the shift, 16 minutes and 43 seconds. She moved to the second folder. She explained, the radio system, the way you explain something to someone whose grief has made the familiar feel new. The APX radio records every transmission, push-to-talk engagements, vehicle telemetry, dispatch acknowledgements, standard protocol on every line of duty. Incident is to pull the file and listen for anomalies. There had been an anomaly, a 19-second clip in which Daniel's lapel mic had been keyed and not released. The system had captured it because the system captures everything. Cheryl clicked the file. Rain came through the speaker first, then windshield wipers, then Daniel's voice. Tired, not angry. The voice of a man at the very end of a shift that had been stretched past its edge. Marco, real quick. When we get back to station, remind me to delete a voicemail from my mother-in-law. A second voice fainter. What now? She wanted me to stop on Greenville for wine. For Lauren's brunch tomorrow. I told her no 3 times tonight. A pause. Wipers steady. Then Daniel again, quieter, almost to himself. The way you say a thing you've been holding too long. Tell Kate I love her. And tell her mom I'm not her personal errand service. Marco starts to answer. The transmission cuts. I asked Cheryl to play it once more. I needed to hear it the second time without breaking. I was wrong about myself. I broke anyway. When I could speak again, I asked her whether the file could be played in a public forum. She told me yes. The file was part of the line of duty review, and that review is being incorporated into the Collin County Public Safety Tribute Ceremony, scheduled for Saturday, April 19th at City Hall Plaza. As the surviving spouse, I had the right to request it be played during the tribute portion. She showed me the calendar. The 19th was circled in red. I had 6 weeks before the county memorial. By the end of that morning, I knew exactly how I would use them. She opened the 3rd folder slowly. She placed a small recorder on the desk. She pressed play. Daniel, honey, I know you're working, but I really need you to stop at the wine shop on Greenville Avenue on your way home. Lauren's bachelorette brunch is tomorrow, and I completely forgot the rosé. Don't tell Kate. She'll make a whole thing out of it. Be a sweetheart. 41 seconds. Then the room was very quiet. Cheryl let it stay quiet. Then she stood up, walked to the whiteboard on the back wall, picked up a black marker. She wrote the timeline. The 7 calls. The voicemail at 11:08, the late call Daniel volunteered for it. 11:47 because the relief crew was running behind. The crash at 1:23 a.m. She drew a line, set the marker down, turned around. This is not a story about your mother causing his death. The crash has a different driver. Curtis Webb will answer for his own choices. But your mother does not get to hide behind the crash. The recording exists. The voicemail exists. The pattern exists. And it is not going to disappear because she didn't show up at the funeral. She paused. Kate, you do not owe them what they did not give him. I opened a blank note on my phone. I typed what she'd said. Lowercase the way I type things I'm trying to keep. Then I drove home. I cried in my car in the parking garage for 11 minutes, with both hands on the steering wheel. She wasn't calling because anyone was dying. She was calling about Rosé. I downloaded Daniel's iCloud archive the following week. He had named me his digital legacy contact in 2023, 2 days after we signed the adoption application. He had not told me. He had simply done it the way he did everything, which was to take care of me in advance of the world hurting me. I searched my sister's name in his messages. I expected 3 threads. I found 9 threads in 12 months. All from her, all favors. Hey, can you grab Mom from the airport Thursday? She'll text you the terminal. Daniel, Lauren here. Can you look at the kitchen faucet before the weekend? You're handy with that stuff. Mom needs her prescription. I can't get there till Wednesday. He had answered every single one of them politely. Sure thing, on my way. No problem. Then I scrolled to November 18th, 2024. 4 months before he died. A single text from my sister to my husband. Don't tell Kate Mom asked you again. She'll overreact. Just grab the wine when you can. Thanks. He had not replied. He had let it sit there. Marked Read, untouched. That was his line. He had been holding it for months. He just hadn't told me he was holding it. I printed all 9 threads, put them in a gray folder. I labeled the tab, Lauren Messages, November 2024 to March 2025. I put it on the shelf next to the folder marked CDR and the folder marked Recording Transcript. On Saturday, March 8th at 11 a.m., the 2 pews reserved for my family at Carrington Funeral Home were empty. The little cream-colored placards on the aisle still said Reserved, Family. Nobody had taken them down. The right side of the chapel was full. Barbara Reeves in the front row. Daniel's older brother Thomas beside her. In a dark suit with a small pin he had taken off a uniform he no longer wore. 3 Reeves aunts and uncles. 22 Collin County firefighters and paramedics in Class A uniforms. White gloves. Gold buttons. Name pins polished. Cheryl Dawson in row 3 in a navy dress. I had seen on her once before. At her own husband's funeral 6 years ago. About 70 people. 14 empty seats on the left. Thomas stopped me before I walked up. He put his hand on my shoulder and looked at me the way people look at you when they've buried someone themselves. He talked about you on every shift. Every single one. I walked to the podium. I told them about the glass of water on my side of the bed every night. I told them about the white mug on the shelf. I told them about the 3 rules he had borrowed from me and passed on to Marco, who passed them to the next class. Flat voice. Use their name. Count their breaths. Nobody dies alone. I didn't cry. I didn't let my voice shake. At minute 9, my phone began to vibrate in the inside pocket of my blazer. At minute 12, it had not stopped. I sat down between Barbara and Thomas. Barbara pressed a glass of water into my hand without looking at me. I took out my phone. 51 missed calls. 20 from my mother. 11 from my father. 8 from Lauren. 5 from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. 3 from a number I didn't have saved. 1 message from my mother, time-stamped 11:21 a.m., sent while I was reading the part about the glass of water. Call me now. Something has gone terribly wrong. I locked the screen. I did not call back. I went to the reception and stood next to Barbara while Thomas spoke quietly beside me. Kate, there was a hit and run last night on 380. Same stretch as Daniel. Plates were caught on dash cam. State police are running them now. The call came at 2:15 p.m. while I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still in the dress from the funeral. Mrs. Reeves, this is Trooper Alan Decker, Texas DPS. I'm sorry to be calling on a Saturday. The vehicle involved in last night's hit and run on 380 is registered to a Lauren, Moore at a Dallas address. The driver fled the scene. The pedestrian. I need to tell you who he is. His name is Marco Silva, your husband's partner the night of March 7th. I held the phone. Outside my bedroom window, the rain had started again. Trooper Decker gave me one more sentence. Marco tried to call your number twice from the ER this morning. He couldn't reach anyone else. Marco had been at a sobriety meeting at a community center a quarter mile off Highway 380. He had been walking home along the shoulder because his doctor had cleared him for no driving after the concussion from February. He hadn't seen the car that hit him. He woke up in the ER confused, certain it was still March 7th. He had reached for the phone and dialed the one number he knew by reflex. Daniel's old station line. He had tried 3 times before a nurse gently took the phone from his hand. He had been trying to call to tell Daniel he was okay. He didn't know yet that Daniel was the one he needed to call for. Lauren's fiancé, a man named Garrett, had driven down from the hill country late Friday night to pick up a specific bottle of wine Lauren had asked for. One a friend was storing at her apartment near 380. At the friend's place, he had 4 more drinks. He had left at midnight, headed back to the hill country. The friend told police later. Lauren texted me twice asking if Garrett had left with the bottle. I told her he'd had too much to drive. She said it was fine. It was the same mile marker as Daniel's crash, the opposite shoulder, the same rain. My mother had sent my husband on a wine run the night he died. 2 weeks later, my sister had sent her fiancé on one. I drove home in silence. When I sat down at my kitchen table at 6 p.m., I finally opened the voicemails from the funeral. My mother. 12:14 p.m. while I was at the reception. Kate, call me back immediately. Garrett made a mistake. He's a good man. You work in dispatch. You must know somebody. We need to make this quieter. Don't let them ruin Lauren's life over this. Call me. Not one apology. Not one mention of Daniel. Not one I'm sorry I wasn't there. My father. A text at 3:08 p.m. Aaron, your mother is falling apart. This is bigger than Daniel now. Lauren needs you. You owe this family. Lauren. A voicemail. 19 seconds. Kate, please call me back. I can't lose Garrett. Mom said you'd help, please. The same words in different mouths. Make it softer. You owe us. Please help. I sat at the kitchen table. Bryce's, Daniel's, old coffee cup from the morning of March. 7th was still on the counter. Brown ring dried into the bottom. I had not washed it in 16 days. I picked up the phone to call the trooper back. To ask what could be done. My fingers knew the number before my brain did. Then I looked at the cup. I thought about the glass of water he had set out for me at dinner on the last day of his life. I thought about the 7 calls my mother had made to him. I thought about the 19 seconds in the cab. Tell Kate I love her, and tell her mom I'm not her personal errand service. I put the phone down. The sun was going gold through the kitchen window. I looked at the white mug on the shelf. For the one who's coming. I said it out loud to the empty kitchen the way Daniel used to say things to a partner he trusted. He held that line for me for years. I'm holding it back for him. I called Cheryl. On April 19th at 2 p.m., 500 people gathered at City Hall, plaza for the Collin County Public Safety Tribute. Firefighters and paramedics from 4 counties in Class A uniforms, 4 line-of-duty families, local press at the back, county leadership on a low stage, Daniel's portrait on an easel at the front left, his Class A jacket hanging from an iron chair, his name pin over the breast pocket. In the 3rd row on the left side of the aisle, my mother, my father, Lauren. All 3 in black, all 3 in pearls, all 3 under the impression they would be invited to stand during the family tribute. I had blocked their numbers on March 9th. They had come anyway. My mother leaned toward me as the plaza clock struck 2. Kate, we should sit with you up front. Family stays together. I did not look at her. I had stopped looking at her 6 weeks before. At 2:22 p.m., Cheryl Dawson walked to the podium. I trained Kate Reeves 11 years ago. Today I want you to hear what she's learned since. I walked up. I took the papers from the inside pocket of my black blazer. I laid them flat on the wood. I looked at the back of the plaza where the wind was coming off the fountain, where Pastor James Whitmore from our church was already standing. I began with 3 sentences. My name is Kate Reeves. I am Daniel Reeves's wife. He died 16 days before he was due to meet our adopted daughter for the first time. The plaza went very quiet. Today I am going to play 19 seconds of audio, recorded inside my husband's vehicle the night he died. After that, I am going to read 3 other things into the record. And then I'm going to ask you to remember Daniel Reeves by the way he held his lines, not by the way other people forgot them. Cheryl nodded to the audiovisual technician. The recording began. Rain through the speakers first, then windshield wipers, then Daniel's voice, tired, not angry, at the very end of a shift stretched past its edge. Casey, Marco, real quick. When we get back to station, remind me to delete a voicemail from my mother-in-law. What now? She wanted me to stop on Greenville for wine. Lauren's brunch tomorrow. I told her no 3 times tonight. A pause. Wipers steady. Tell Kate I love her, and tell her mom I'm not her personal errand service. The transmission cut. 500 people. Not one cough. Not one whisper. Even the fountain seemed to lower its voice. I read the Verizon call detail records aloud. 7 incoming calls from my mother's number to my husband's personal phone between 7:22 p.m. and 11:08 p.m. on the night he died. I played her voicemail through the same speakers that had just held his voice. Be a sweetheart. Don't tell Kate. She'll make a whole thing out of it. In the front row, Marco Silva in his wheelchair put his right hand over his eyes. A dispatcher in row 4 began to cry without making a sound. I read aloud the text my sister had sent my husband on. November 18th, 2024. Don't tell Kate Mom asked you again. She'll overreact. Just grab the wine when you can. Lauren turned in her seat to look around the plaza. Not one person in those 500 turned back to look at her. Cheryl's technician switched the screen behind the stage to a single image, a screenshot of a message my mother had sent to a family group chat on March 9th. One day after the funeral, she had not attended, asking for prayers for Lauren and Garrett during this very difficult time. Daniel's name was not in the message. I read it aloud once. I did not read it twice. Pastor Whitmore stepped down from the side of the stage. He walked across the front of the plaza to the third row. He bent down beside my mother. He spoke to her for 8 seconds. Nobody in the plaza heard what he said. Then he stood, turned, and walked back to where he'd been standing. My mother's face did not move. I had one thing left to say. I had written it before I came. My mother told me 2 weeks before this service that the funeral would be too depressing. She told me the family was going to my sister's bachelorette weekend instead. She said it the way you talk about a movie that ran too long. I looked at Daniel's portrait on the easel. My husband held his line for years so I would not have to carry the weight. Today I am carrying it for him, and I am not going to do it quietly. Family is whoever picks up the phone when nobody else will. Daniel Reeves knew that. I looked at Marco in his wheelchair. So does the partner he quietly kept alive for 18 months. I looked at Cheryl. So does the QA supervisor who sat with me on a Saturday morning. While I learned to live without him, I looked at the rows of firefighters and paramedics and dispatchers. So do the people in this plaza today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for remembering him the way he deserved. I stepped down from the podium. Trooper Alan Decker in full Texas DPS uniform gave me a single nod as I passed his row. Thomas Reeves stood up from his seat in the front. Marco lifted his head from his wheelchair. Cheryl was waiting at the foot of the steps with a paper cup of water. I did not look at the third row. I walked past my mother's seat the same way. She had walked past my husband's casket without stopping. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. My father sat down. Lauren cried without anyone reaching for her. On May 6th, my case manager called. I was at the kitchen table when the phone rang. The same table where the orange adoption folder had sat for 2 years. Her voice was the way. I remembered it, careful, slow, like a dispatcher used to giving people news they weren't ready for. Kate, we have a match. Her name is Ella. She's 3. We think your home is the right place. I held the phone in both hands. I cried in a way I hadn't cried since the funeral, and it was nothing like the way I had cried then. A photograph arrived in the mail 3 days later. A small girl in a yellow dress sitting on porch steps, her hands on her knees, smiling at someone behind the camera. I taped it to the cabinet door above the white mug. I told Daniel out loud in the kitchen that I would set out a glass of water on her side of the bed every night, the way he would have. On May 12th, I went back to work. Cheryl was waiting at my console with 2 cups of coffee. One was hers. The other was in the white ceramic mug from my cabinet, the one Daniel had labeled in marker. She had washed it and brought it in. At 9:03 a.m., a test call came through on the radio from Unit 9-1. Marco's voice, short. Headset clean. Coffee fresh. See you on the radio. A postcard was propped against my monitor. Thomas Reeves. His handwriting square and tidy like his brother's. Brother says hi. Take care of his girl. I tucked it under the corner of the monitor next to the yellow post-it that said, breathe with them. Count to 4. I put on my headset. I picked up the red mug out of habit. I put it back down. The white one, the one Daniel had written on, was the one I drank from now. Here is what 19 seconds of audio and a gray folder and 500 people at City Hall Plaza taught me. Family is not the people who share your name. It is the people who show up. The ones who sit for 3 hours without speaking. The ones who polish their name pins. The ones who wheel themselves to a plaza, podium on a broken arm because they want to give your husband back his funeral. The water glass on the nightstand. The mug on the shelf. The partner in the front row. That is your family. Daniel knew that. I do now too. Drop a comment below. Tell me the name of the person who showed up for you when nobody else did. Disclaimer: this is a fictional story created for entertainment purposes only. All names, characters, and events are purely imaginary.